Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and with me is my lunar buddy, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I
I,
I don't know how I became your lunar buddy, but
I don't
okay.
know. It's not. It just. I think I'm funny, but I'm not. I guess. um, if This is again Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, the personal, professional, career development podcast. If this is your first time watching the show, welcome to our show. If you're returning, thanks for returning and keep sharing. It's we love to put this out there every week. For those of you that are listening, you may not know that we actually have a guest speaker, Ms. Lynell Shadows. And Lynell, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on the show today, guys. I really appreciate that. So I am a leadership coach, and by background, I come kind of a journey that started in accounting, went to human resources, did some consulting, did some wellness, and that brought me to coaching. So I'm kind of a path that I can see that string that pulled through and what got me to where I am today. But I just have a real passion for working with people to figure out what's going on with their career, but really what's going on with their life. I look at the whole picture when I coach my clients, and so it's just a real joy to be able to do that and just to find what sparks them.
Awesome, awesome. And what's your business called?
Oh, my business is called Leap of Faith Coaching.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. So Um, with that, we'd like to announce our topic. Our topic for today is, or the topic for the show is find your path. So, Linnell, when we were talking about things that you're passionate about, you said that this is one of those things. So, can you tell us a little bit more about find your path?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned in the intro there, it came from my own finding my own path and kind of finding that journey. So when I was back in corporate America, kind of just figuring out what that was, felt like it was a little bit in the dark. And when I was working in corporate human resources, there weren't necessarily coaches that were out there helping people that were like, mid-level leaders. There was always the C-suite that would have coaches, but there weren't the rest of us. And so I feel like that is such a benefit to have the opportunity to be heard, to talk. I mean, because how many times do people say like they're just going from point A to point B to point C and just back again and just always kind of chasing their tail, always busy with so many things. So I love the fact that I'm able to help my clients find their path and what really makes them come alive, because that is something that once I see that energy, it's like we start to talk about something, I see the energy shift, and that's really exciting for me because I'm like, "Whoa, we're on to something. Let's just continue with that a little bit." And it's so funny because clients don't often see it because they're just talking, myself included. I'll be like, I'll talk really fast and get really excited. And my coach is like, whoa, slow down. Let's go back to that again. So that's really fun to see what really makes them come alive and just have that spark that you're like, this is what they really want to be doing in life. Because so many of us, and I did a post on this recently where I talked about my path, and like even where I started, it was always like what somebody else was doing, kind of following their path, following their lead of what I thought I should do. And I've learned along the way that when I find what really comes, and brings me that spark and brings me alive, things are so much more exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that when I'm talking to people and you see it, that energy that sparks up as they talk about what they're passionate about or what they want to do or where they want to go. I can see that as well. I mean, I think one of the podcasts we just previously recorded was the fact that people, their whole demeanor changes when they get excited about something or talking about that. But I also like the fact that you brought up something about helping those leaders, not C suite, but kind of in the middle, that they
Mhm.
get a lot
Mhm.
of things thrown at them and they're trying to figure out how to overcome or how to adapt, how to get over that hump. So I'm glad to hear that is your focus on that area, because that's one of the challenging pieces out there in corporate America. How do they get to that next level? How do they maintain? How do they overcome? So there's a lot of challenges they face.
Yeah, they're really they're kind of caught in what we would call as like the sandwich kind of generation, but they're kind
Yeah,
of the sandwich of they're like the meat and cheese, I guess, of corporate America, because
yeah,
they're feeding up and they're feeding down and
yeah.
they're having such a huge impact all around.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like Joe, and like yourself, when I teach, I I generally teach statistics. Apparently I'm good at it. But I tell my students it's more about learning a language than it is doing math. And once they understand that, everything else falls into place. And it's to your point, you see them go from that frustration or insecurity or not sure what's going on, deer in the headlights, to I think I got this. And at that point, everything changes with their coursework. I mean, it's like a switch gets switched. A switch gets switched. A switch gets turned on.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely, because other people realize that and recognize it as well too. When that energy shifts, and then when they're doing something, people are like, "What's going on with you? What
Yeah.
happened? What changed? What
Mhm.
shifted?" And then on the flip side too is that when things aren't going well, my sister and I were just talking about that with her career, and when she was in a job that she really wasn't happy, she's like, "It was just bleeding out into my family, and I knew that it was time to switch because it was having such a drastic impact on the family." And she was like, "I don't want to go through this anymore." And I mean, I hear that a lot with my clients too.
Mm.
Sometimes they go, "I don't know what I want to do, but I know that I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do that." And so that's
Yeah.
fun because it's kind of leaving breadcrumbs. And we're like, okay, so we know that this is process of elimination. I mean, I have a client right now. He's looking to retire and switch into another career, and so he's trying to figure out. He's giving me some of that. Don't want this. Don't want that. Don't want that. And but we're also discovering what are the things that make him come alive that he gets really excited about that he wants to retain from his past experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's go ahead, Joe.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's um, like discussing with some of the clients I've had or some of the opportunities I've had to do. I've been fortunate to have doing military transition briefings. You know, if you're in the military for a long time, 5 or more years, a lot of times you tend to forget what civilian life is, or you think it's gone, it was paused, and then you really get out there and you realize it has changed. The dynamics, the culture of corporate work is different, and asking them what they want to do after they've been told what to do for so long is a big challenge. Sometimes it's like, well, what do you want me to be? It's like, no, what do you want to be? This isn't about me. This
Yeah,
is about you finding your path. You know,
yeah,
you for whatever reason you're leaving the military, and whether it's by choice or not, you need to find your path. You need to find out what you're passionate about. What, like Joe and I say, we don't know what we want to do when we grow up because we're still just embracing every day for the moments and opportunities it provides. And it's acknowledging that us acknowledging that helps us understand what we want to do when we grow up, or at least part of the things that we wanted to do. So
yeah.
yeah, it's really just helping people figure out what they want to do. And like you said, that process of elimination. Well, I don't want to be a cop in the military anymore. I don't want to be a mechanic in the military anymore. I don't want to do this anymore in corporate America. That's easy. It's the what do you really want to do? If you could do anything in the world and it didn't matter if you got paid for it or not, what would that be?
Yeah. And that's really overwhelming, I think, for some people because they're like, they don't even know where to begin. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I have choice. And I get the military because I'm an active duty military spouse. So I'm surrounded with that. And my husband and I talk about the two of like, at some point he'll take off the uniform. And what do you want to do afterwards? So,
Yeah.
as any one of us that are coaches know that you don't coach your family and your friends, you just try to find another coach to coach them because you can't, you know all those hot buttons. But, being of choice is kind of this foreign concept because I get a choice where I'm going to live. I get a choice
Yeah.
where I'm going to work. I get a choice of how I'm going to work, if I'm going to work at home or I'm going to work in the office, if I'm going to travel. It's just kind of mind blowing. And I can think of so many that just don't know what to do, that they kind of get this place where, and I can think of a friend who, when her husband left the military, he was really lost. He didn't know what
Yeah.
to do. And so he
Yeah.
ended up going back into civilian because it was the comfort space, right? Because
Yeah.
he had lost his identity. And I think that's a big part of it too. I mean, I can say that too. I felt like when I left my corporate HR for a while, I didn't realize it till a while later when I was in my coaching program, but I'd lost my identity because that was a piece
Yeah.
of who I was. And people knew me as this corporate HR leader. And so that's what people, they get afraid of what does that mean about them. And so we have to start peeling back these layers of the onion to
Yeah.
find out what are the things that really matter to them. And so that's when we start focusing on what do you value? Is this in alignment with what matters most to you? And that's why I tell my clients, I'm like, we can talk all day long about your job, but I want to know what makes you tick outside of work, because 99.9% of my clients have something they're really passionate about. So when we start to strike into that, we start to realize that they can have it all. And as a mom too, I love that piece that I get to model that for my daughters, of figuring out, like, you can have it all and you can have choice. And also the other thing that comes up a lot of times too is like, what's in my control and what's out of my control, because that's a big factor that comes up with my people that are like really scared. It's like, what's next, and these things that they can't control. And so we work on that a lot too.
Wow. Yeah, you said a lot of things. Again, being a retired military member, I had that experience where I didn't really know who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to do, and for probably 6 months after my retirement, that's really how I felt. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, where I was supposed to be going. So that is a challenge for a lot of people, even if it's not the military, but a corporate identity, like you just mentioned, helping people to see that you're more than just whatever that title was or whatever that role was. That is a challenge. When I talk to people, that's one of the things they associate with all the time, is that thing they've been doing for so many years.
Mhm.
And like you touched on at the very beginning, it's not until we get them to get that spark, like you said, finding that thing that they're passionate about. And like Dave said it too, that thing that you would do even if you weren't getting paid, that's
Yeah.
when you can start to peel away, okay, this is part of you, but this is kind of in the past, and it definitely contributes to where you are today. But we have to start thinking about what this looks like for you in the future. Like you said, the person is thinking about retiring and trying to figure out what direction they're going to go. um, Again, they've already kind of identified the things they don't want to do, so that makes it a little bit easier, but it's still trying to overcome that persona that they were. And because how do they probably don't know how to translate that to what I want to do today? And it's probably
Right.
in there, but just helping them identify that. We said this on previous episodes, you know, who you were or the things you did in the past still are relevant. You just have to figure out how to apply them to this new thing you want to do. And I think
Yeah.
that's helping people see that as still a challenge. But
Yeah, and something that, Joe, that you were saying there too, a word that comes up a lot of times is I should do this. Like, should is really powerful. Well, who says you should? Why should you? And so this starts to tie back to all of these kind of these
mhm,
roots that kind of have shaped us and how we are today because of what our moms said, our dads said, our sibling,
mhm,
our friend, or this or that. And so that comes up so often with my clients. I'm like, well, who says? And so they're like, huh, I hadn't really thought about that. But we have a lot of these ideas that we have just made as part of ourselves because somebody else said we should. And I
mhm.
can pull back a lot of layers from when I was growing up and I was going to college. My sisters and I were first generation to go to college, and so all these shoulds, and I heard that for sure out of my mom of saying this is the things you should do because don't do this, don't do that, but you should go. But then as I've gotten older, I've discovered what are the things that I want to do, I choose to do.
Mhm. Yeah, I was really reflecting on what you and Joe have just been saying the last couple of moments. My mind was just spinning like, wow, I can totally relate to that because for the first 15 years of my career, I was in military law enforcement and civilian law enforcement. And when I couldn't do that anymore, I was lost. I was lost for a while. I had just finished my bachelor's degree. It is not what I'd wanted. Well, I wanted to get my bachelor's degree, but I didn't want to get out of the military, or I didn't think I did. It was a little bit of a love-hate relationship. But I was really kind of taken aback at what do I do now? Who am I? I was so used to wearing that badge and protecting people and being there for people, and now I couldn't do that. I couldn't be in that capacity. So I had to really understand what does the new me look like. And it took some time, and once you do figure that out, it feels a lot better. It feels like a warm hug. But here again, I shouldn't say keep, what if you get displaced, involuntarily displaced, because the company's reorganizing or resizing, or, there's whatever reason they're getting rid of the expensive people. It's what do you do then? What is your identity then? And
Mhm.
Joe and I've talked about this offline, and it's whatever you want to be. That's really what it
Mhm.
boils down to. You just have to understand what that want is. And to your point, there's a lot of shoulds. You should do this, you should do that. Well, what does that really mean? That should to that person may not be the should for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's even as you're saying that, it's like, be careful who you ask for advice from
Mhm.
because have they gone the road that you've gone before you? Have they gone this path? Because
Yeah.
I've seen some sort of quote, something written up to that effect. Because if I ask somebody that has never gone, is not entrepreneurial, I have no idea. And so
Right.
their idea might be really kind of not on the right track at all. And so I would say align yourself with people that have the big visions, have the big
Hmm.
ideas, and to know that you're not alone too. Because I think any one of us, maybe you guys as well, when you were leaving the military, like what do you do? Like who did you talk to? Military gives you some out processing, tools. I've heard kind of mixed bag as to how well those prepare you for what's after military, but just know that you're not alone. Because I think when I reflect back, of course, why do we do the work we do? Because we're trying to probably heal, probably trying to make up for what we didn't have back in the day. But it's not, you're not alone. And to have this conversation, because people don't actually take the time to listen and to really get curious about you. And how many times have you guys had someone that says, well, Dave, you should do this. Hey, Joe, you should do this. And they don't really know. They don't ask you the questions. So being a coach, I'm like, ask me the questions. I want to be challenged. I want to get to the root of that, because I know that there's something underneath that. And so sometimes I don't know what it is. We're probably the hardest to coach, but that's a sidebar. But just don't go it alone. And
Yeah.
trying to find your path, it just can take longer, slower, and maybe more frustrations. And so if you can work with somebody to help you find that path, I think that's just a really big bonus.
Yeah, I think that's for me, that was the challenge. Thinking I was alone,
Mhm.
and not really reaching out to share my concerns, my experiences with other people or people like me, because everybody surrounding me had not gone through that experience. So even if you talk about it, they couldn't relate to it. Kind of like you
Mhm.
said, people, you can't talk to people if they haven't done it. Again, they have nothing they can relate to be able to share with you. So it wasn't until I started to recognize, yeah, there are the people that are struggling just like me, and I started to have those conversations with people, and that actually did help me because again, they could, feel my pain. They knew what I was going through, and then they could offer suggestions and how to overcome those things. So that is very powerful because I said this on a previous episode just a few episodes ago. My challenge was always I was trying to do it alone. And everything I've
Mhm.
done, I know my wife has been there for me and my family, but for the most part, I've tried to do it on my own, not reach out for help. And so that was a little hard for me to, be vulnerable and say, hey, I need some assistance. I need some help. But when I did that, it started to make sense and I could definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. But
Yeah.
during that time, it was really challenging.
Yeah. That word vulnerable is so key. I talk to my leaders about, if you're ready to be vulnerable, because it opens doors instead of closing
Yep.
doors. It's like, okay, I'm human. I'm broken. None of us is perfect, all of that. And so
Right.
the idea too, I heard you say something, you didn't say the words, but my mind went there as far as community. And that's kind of why, seeing that you're not alone, there's other people
Yep.
that are going through this. And that's why
Yep.
my colleague and I created the Thriving Leaders Connection for mid-level leaders to be in
Mhm.
community, to have a group coaching as well as
Yep.
individual coaching, because we started to see so many common themes that other ones were
Mhm.
experiencing. And I would say, not that you're not special, Joe, but Dave's going through that, Bob's going through
Right.
that, Mary's
Yep.
going through. Of course, I don't give names, but you know what I'm saying. There's lots of clients that are in this
Yep.
space, and so we just saw this need for bringing community together and working through things, and also getting some ideas. I don't
Mhm.
have all the ideas, and anyone that knows anything about coaching knows I don't bring the ideas. My clients have it. I just ask the right questions to start to extract that, and for them to get the ahas and raise their awareness. So I love that fact that we've been able to provide that for our community.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're deliberately focusing on that middle management or the
Mhm.
management piece because that's where Joe and I were in the military. Enlisted and enlisted supervisors, and that's that low to mid level or high upper level manager type position. They equate to other positions outside that are tend to be a little bit higher, but that's another discussion. But it's it's that they I think from my experience working with people and watching peers and colleagues, um, you're right. There isn't that assistance for that mid-level management group. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, they're already a manager. Oh, they're already there. They've got this figured out. They're already taking care of people. They're fine. They're dependable. Well, what happens if, and doesn't, and I know we've, mentioned the military several times, but what about, just out there in corporate America or in public service or government or whatever? It's like, what happens if you get displaced or get moved to another position within the company? It's what do you do? Who do you talk to? And I've found that a lot of mid-level managers or managers, that is their network, are other managers
Mhm.
within that company, and it can be challenging to reach out and expand your network in case of something, or if you change your mind that you really don't want to be doing this anymore. Who do you
Mhm.
reach out to? And that's why I think it's important and honorable of the community that you're focused on, because I believe that there's a huge need
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like even when we think about leadership development, how many of us were thrown into leadership without any training? It's like, oh,
Mhm.
you're a
Yep.
really good superstar and name the field. Mine was
Yep.
human resources. Okay, we're going to promote you into management. Oh, okay, what does that look like? I mean, that's the funny thing, working in HR too. I mean, wasn't necessarily trained right away. I mean, I went back and
Right.
got my master's in HR, and so I learned a lot along the way because I knew that much about myself that I didn't want to just learn on the job. I wanted to get some solid foundation, which is kind of, anybody that knows me, like I love to learn. And so gathering that, but a lot of my clients are like, oh, I don't even know that. And then they'll come to me too, because I have the HR background. They're like, okay, you have an idea about this. And so they figure out some things about themselves. And that's the cool thing with the TLC, the learning, Thriving Leaders Connection, is that they learn from one another as well too. So because I've had some people when they were looking to join, they said, what are the other people's backgrounds? I said, very different from yours. And that's the really cool thing for you. And my
Right.
background is very different from theirs. And that's a really cool thing too, because I like the fact that we're not all the same, because you get such
Yeah.
a great breadth of experience through other people's experiences and different ideas. So you can learn from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we talk about all the time. The fact that even if you're building a team, you don't want to build a team with somebody that's just like you, have experiences just like you. Then you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
limited on being able to problem solve or brainstorm, because you're going to have the same type of mind. But if you get that person that does something totally different, or somebody that's weaker in that area that or stronger in that area that you're weak in, then you're going to complement each other. So I like the idea that, like you said, with that community of all these different backgrounds, all these different experiences, education levels, all those things lend to a richer learning environment, because again, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you're going to learn from everybody else. And so that's very powerful. But a lot of people, unfortunately, in some of those leadership positions, don't see that as a gain or benefit. And
Right.
so like Dave said, I really like that you're focusing on that group, because you're right. Most of them have been rock stars in whatever field they were in. And then now they're saying, well, you've done this great. We're going to make you a leader. And a lot sometimes that just doesn't translate. They may
Mhm.
be a great technical person or operator, but when it comes to trying to lead others, they're going to be very limited on their ability to do that, because like you said, a lot of times they're not provided with training. They basically follow the person before them, or they may be peered up, or partnered with somebody else who's got that experience. But what level of experience do they have? Did they do the same thing, go up through the ranks, now became a manager or a leader? And so they're basically going on maybe knowledge they learned from somebody else. So yeah, until you put something in place for those mid-level managers, they're really going to be flying by the seat of their pants until they get kind of a handle on it. And that could be good and bad. I mean,
Yeah.
they could learn good ways and bad ways, but it still comes down to how they apply that for their
Yeah.
future. So,
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
agree with you, Joe. Absolutely. So many people are promoted into management leadership positions because of their technical expertise. They're
right.
subject matter experts,
Yeah.
and leadership doesn't understand that managing people and leading people are two separate skill sets above and beyond what their current technical expertise is. Um, and I always encourage people that are in that position. I mean, they like the paychecks, they like the pay bumps and all that stuff and the benefits, but they tend to get a little bit lost. Like you said, they're stumbling around trying to find their way in the dark. And I encourage them, find a mentor, find a coach.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're in their same department. The job doesn't matter. You already know the job. You need to learn the
Hmm.
manage people and lead people aspect. So find good people in your company or outside your company that can help mentor and coach you, because that's going to be the only way. That and and proving yourself. Find some classes, find some certifications so you can understand what being a manager and being a leader really means.
Yeah. Yeah. As you both were talking to, I mean, the you guys have heard this as many times, so I have, but imposter syndrome. And that's where people are like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
who am I? Or they get they get promoted to this level, or they go from manager to director, and they're like, who am I? And so this whole idea of like what got you here won't get you there. And so
Right.
they've got to learn
Yeah.
some new skills. They've got to, up level and figure out what does that next level look like. So, okay, it's managing it here. Now I'm directing it. And so now I have to, and I find some of my clients too, they're scared of going to the next
Mhm.
level because they haven't seen it modeled in a way that they can see will fit in their life.
Yeah.
And mostly the women, I'm just going to say that. I know that's
Yeah.
stereotypical, but it's a lot of women that are like, I need better balance. I need a better way to fit my personal life in around my work life. And so they are holding themselves back. And so that's where I'm a little bit of devil's advocate and say, what if there were another way? What if you were the one that kind of broke that mold
Mhm.
and saw a new way, and that you were able to be that mentor for other people? So we definitely play that space, and I get it. I'm not crazy enough to think that every company is going to be able to be shifted, but it gives my clients that opportunity to say, is it the right fit for me still, or is it time to go to a place where I'm not trying to do a square peg in a round hole? And so
Yeah.
we work through that, because imposter syndrome is such a big thing. I mean, any one of us goes through that. How many times, like, who am I to say this? Who are you not to say this?
Right.
Who are you not to be this?
Yep.
So,
I think you said something very key when you were talking about people not being able to see themselves in that position because they don't see an example of it, and that's really kind
mhm,
of the experience I had when as I was starting to do things on my own because I didn't know any doctors in front of me, I didn't know any authors, I didn't know any of those things, so everything or most of the things I've done I had to kind of figure it out myself. And so that is
mhm,
a scary position to be in because there's no example, there's no blueprint, no plan in place, or that you're aware of anyway. And so that
mhm.
is kind of taking a leap of faith. I'm going to step into this new role, this new position without having that model of what it should look like. But I think you also touched on something else. And you said it earlier on, if we want to move to that next level, and Dave said it too, we have to find those people that are successful at it. We have to find those people. We don't want to go, mentor or be a mentee to someone who was terrible at it, because you're just going to continue to do the same, be the same type person. But if we want to get to that next level, and there is an example out there, we want to go find that person that's done it, been successful at it, and then maybe glean from them how we can get to the next level. And this is one thing me and Dave always talk about. Even if they give us their blueprint of, how they got there, it doesn't mean we can use that exact blueprint to get us there. We still have to figure
Right,
out how it applies to us, how we can, use it to maximize our potential. So,
right,
We've got about
right. I
two
mean,
minutes left. So, what final thoughts do you want to leave the audience with, Lynn? I mean, you've said so
uh,
many great things. I'm just like, just that last little fix.
yeah, well, I have a quote put up here because it's something that I have on my signature line in my email, and I just posted about it recently. It says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who come alive." It's a quote by Howard Thurman, and I think it is so powerful. I think any one of us would go, "Yes, absolutely, I get
yeah.
that one," and that's why I just encourage my clients. And so, as Joe said, I took a leap of faith. That's why my company is called Leap of Faith Coaching, because
Mhm.
I wasn't really sure. I was kind of going through the dark, trying to figure it out myself. And so I encourage my clients to take a leap of faith that you will be what you want to be, but you don't have to do it alone. So that's kind of summing up some topics we've talked about, and just go after what you're passionate about, not what everybody else says you should do.
Joe, what are your final thoughts?
Well, again, this has been a great conversation. Again, looking down at the time, I'm like, oh man, time, we're already at time. So yeah, I think we could have continued this conversation because it is a great conversation. And those are the people that I try to affect as much as well. Those that middle level managers or leaders that are maybe their first time doing it, or just need some guidance or assistance. So I am real passionate about assisting people in those capacities as well. So I do appreciate all your uh, feedback input into this topic because again it is a much needed area that needs to be worked on. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you, Lynn, so much for taking the time and sharing. Like Joe said, we could talk about this for hours. That's one of our passions is that mid-level management leadership piece. Um, yeah, I should probably stop right there because I'll keep going. If you want to reach out to Lynn, her contact information is going to be in the description. Reach out to her. It's a great opportunity to talk with someone that really knows her craft. So, with that, we want to thank you for joining us on another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. And with that, as always, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.